The biggest takeaway from the last major bounty hunter ranking wasn't the ranking. It was Padmé Amidala's survival rate. The comment section burning more energy cataloging how a sitting Naboo senator kept walking away from professional assassination attempts than engaging the actual hierarchy question. Zam Wesell deploys kouhun centipedes through a ventilation shaft into Padmé's bedroom while she sleeps. 2 of them. Creatures capable of killing an adult in minutes. Padmé survives because Anakin Skywalker has reflexes that belong in a different biological category. Then, Jango Fett personally fires a saberdart at Zam to silence her before she can give up his name. The comment section adored that dynamic. The organized, evidence-first case for where the bounty hunter hierarchy actually sits got buried under the noise. The case that needed making is this. Cad Bane didn't just become the galaxy's #1 bounty hunter. He became the successor to a man the Kaminoans evaluated against every available warrior in the known galaxy, and selected as the genetic foundation for a republic army of millions. That succession is documented in Bane's own canonical biography, legible in the structure of a timeline anyone can verify, and backed by 3 specific exhibits in the Canon record that have been sitting in plain sight since 2002. The lore settled this argument years ago. The fan community keeps missing it because Boba Fett has been a household name for decades, and his father has only been in the active conversation for roughly 20 years. Cultural familiarity isn't analysis. This video is going to treat it like the cognitive shortcut it's. Every claim gets labeled canon or legends when the distinction matters. That's not a formality. It's how you keep the case standing when the audience actually goes to check the citations. And this audience does. The fandom claim that Jango Fett trained Cad Bane is backwards. Canon record from the Book of Boba Fett establishes the opposite relationship. Cad Bane trained Boba Fett as a bounty hunter. The mentorship arrow runs from Bane to the younger Fett, not from Jango to Bane. Getting that direction wrong doesn't collapse the underlying argument, but presenting inverted lore to an audience that already caught a competing video misspelling this man's name as Jango Fett in its own script is the kind of error that costs you the room before you finish the introduction. Start with what Cad Bane actually did. Not a summary, the specific operations that built the reputation, in the order that established it. The Jedi Temple heist on Coruscant set the template for everything that followed. Heavily fortified, staffed by masters and knights operating with precognitive perception as a living security layer, the Holocron Vault holding intelligence that would shape Force user recruitment for a generation. Bane penetrated it, extracted with a holocron, and delivered it intact to his client, Canon, the Clone Wars. His client was the Sith. Getting that contract and completing it's a credential that explains itself without embellishment. The Senate hostage crisis worked from the opposite angle. Not covert extraction, but open confrontation at the Republic's legislative heart. Bane walked armed personnel into the Senate chamber, took hostages at the highest level of Republic government, and negotiated directly with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine from a position that should have been impossible to sustain. Canon, the Clone Wars. His psychological read on how the Republic would respond wasn't just accurate. It was accurate enough to architect an exit strategy around before the operation even started. He secured safe passage, released the hostages on his own timetable, and walked away from a building with the full weight of Republic security converging on it during his occupancy. Operations at that level require advanced intelligence gathering, a precise behavioral model of institutional decision-makers under duress, the discipline to hold a position under extreme pressure, and the judgment not to escalate past the point where extraction remains viable. Bane executed all 4 simultaneously and walked out. Then the simultaneous engagement with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Quinlan Vos. Verified canon, high confidence. 2 Jedi Masters coordinating their attacks, both force-augmented in speed and precognition. Bane held them both occupied long enough to complete his objective and exit. Obi-Wan Kenobi survived Darth Maul, survived General Grievous, and ultimately survived Anakin Skywalker. Holding either of them in a direct, one-on-one engagement is a remarkable individual performance. Holding both simultaneously while an active operational objective still runs, that defines a combat ceiling, placing Bane at the absolute limit of what a non-force-sensitive human can achieve. His arsenal is built around one philosophical priority: close the precognitive gap. Nothing in his kit is designed to outmuscle a Jedi. All of it's designed to disrupt the Jedi's prescient read on what comes next, generating angular, unpredictable attacks from unexpected directions, arriving before the Force can fully formulate a warning. He went to prison, a Republic detention facility. He was out before it finished mattering. In one documented case, Bane used the facility itself as the venue for completing an assassination contract, while a disguised Obi-Wan Kenobi ran an undercover operation around him, Canon, the Clone Wars, and emerged with more operational leverage than when he'd walked in. This is what apex-level operational thinking looks like. The environment constructed to contain you becomes a resource. When the Holocron operation's original extraction plan encounters an obstacle, Bane improvises under time pressure, with Republic forces converging rather than abandon the contract. Canon, the Clone Wars. Adaptability when the original architecture collapses and the exit window starts closing. That's the characteristic separating genuinely elite operators from people who execute flawlessly only when conditions stay exactly as planned. By any objective measure of the Clone Wars era, Cad Bane was the dominant professional in the galaxy. The question is what position he occupied relative to the man who was already dead when that era began. Secondary sources reporting on Bane's canonical biography, including material based on his Wikipedia profile, indicate that during Jango Fett's active career, Cad Bane was the galaxy's second-best bounty hunter. He moved to the top position only after Jango's death at Geonosis. Transparency matters here. The exact verbatim text of Cad Bane's Wikipedia page couldn't be confirmed from primary source access during preparation of this script. That's stated directly rather than buried in a footnote. The confidence on that specific citation is moderate. The logical structure of the timeline carries the argument with or without the verbatim quote. Jango Fett dies at the close of Canon Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, killed on the Geonosian arena floor after his jetpack gave out in combat, stripping him of the mobility that had been central to how he fought. The Clone Wars begins simultaneously on that same arena floor. When Canon the Clone Wars series covers the years of conflict that follow, Bane is immediately and unambiguously the top name in the profession across the entire run of the series. No transition period, no interim holder, no one briefly occupying the position between Jango's death and Bane's uncontested ascent. The vacancy and the succession are simultaneous, which means the person who created the vacancy was the only standing obstacle between Bane and a position he'd apparently held second for the entirety of his career up to that point. Lore prosecutors watching this, go to Wikipedia's Cad Bane biography section, find the text addressing his hierarchical position relative to Jango Fett, and put the exact quote in the comments. That primary source belongs in this conversation, and this community will locate it faster than any isolated research phase could. 3 exhibits establish what Jango Fett actually was, not as a matter of opinion, but as a matter of canon record. Exhibit 1 is institutional. Kamino is nothing but ocean. No continents, no landmarks, just the gray churn of permanent storm water to every horizon, and white laboratory spires rising above it on enormous stilts. Canon, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. The Kaminoans built their civilization above the floods, and engineered their science in the same direction, toward biological precision no other species in the galaxy matched. Completely clinical, completely unsentimental, dealing exclusively in outcomes that can be measured and reproduced. Zero institutional stake in making a romantic choice about whose cells they preserve. Their evaluations are worth more than any fan ranking, precisely because nothing about the process was subjective. The commission for the Grand Army of the Republic came through Darth Tyrannus, Count Dooku, operating under the cover identity of the late Jedi Master Sifo Dyas. A secondary source attributes the specific template recommendation to Tyrannus, rather than to a fully independent Kaminoan evaluation, and that's acknowledged rather than smoothed over. What Canon Episode 2 establishes directly, spoken by Kaminoan Prime Minister Lama Su to Obi-Wan Kenobi, is the nature of what the Kaminoans did to the template once they had it. Genetically modified to make them less independent than the original host. They had to reduce Jango Fett's autonomy, his individual drive, his resistance to centralized command, his instinct to act on his own assessment rather than on orders, to make him deployable as a military unit at scale. Every clone trooper who fought at Geonosis, Umbara, or Christophsis ran on a biologically dialed-down version of that template. The deliberately reduced copy dominated a galactic conflict for 3 years. Not Cad Bane's DNA, not Boba Fett's. The institution running the most consequential military contract in galactic history assessed the available pool of warriors across known space with resources, methodology, and stakes no comment section ever had to match, and wrote one name on the evaluation: Jango Fett. Canon, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. His payment for providing the genetic foundation of a galactic army was one unaltered clone, no behavioral conditioning, raised as a son. The most sought-after warrior in the galaxy was offered a blank check by the finest biological engineers alive and spent his own DNA on a child. That transaction is in the canon record and requires no interpretation. Exhibit 2 is visceral and requires no secondary sourcing whatsoever. It's on screen in a Canon theatrical film from 2002. The first battle of the Clone Wars erupts on the floor of the Petronaki Arena at Geonosis. Jedi fighting battle droids in the sand pit, dust and weapon fire, the scale of what the galaxy just stepped into becoming legible in real time. On the stone balcony above the arena floor, Count Dooku stands. A Jedi Master named Coleman Trebor makes his approach. Trebor was a Verk, tall, reptilian, distinguishable from the other Jedi below. Supplementary canon character databases identify him as a sitting member of the Jedi High Council at the time of Geonosis. The prosecution flags that the council seat confirmation comes from supplementary canon rather than Episode 2's theatrical cut, and that specific detail should carry the weight of supplementary material accordingly. What the theatrical film shows is a senior Jedi at the height of an order, fielding roughly 10,000 active Knights and Masters at full galactic strength, sensing an opportunity with Dooku exposed, and moving toward it using the Force. Jango draws. 3 shots. Trebor's body goes over the railing into the arena below. Canon, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. From the moment Jango registers the incoming master to the end of the engagement, approximately 4 seconds of screen time. The claim that Jango Fett killed 6 Jedi with his bare hands circulates in the comment sections making his case. Stop repeating it. The power scaling problem is immediate and obvious. A fully trained Jedi at combat capacity with Force precognition active does not fall to an unarmed human under any standard canon framework for how Force-augmented combat works. The specific primary source for this claim, canon film, Legends novel, Legends RPG supplement, or official reference book, couldn't be located with any reliable confidence during preparation of this script. What the prosecution builds on is what's visible in a canon film. 1 master, 3 shots, 4 seconds. Identifying that your own side's most dramatic talking point lacks verified sourcing isn't a concession. Getting caught with inflated evidence in front of this particular jury is far more expensive. Search the Canon episode guide for the scene where a sitting Jedi High Council member falls to Cad Bane's hand during the Order's full-strength period. Bane fought Masters, held 2 simultaneously in verified canon combat, which is extraordinary. His record during the Clone Wars doesn't include a sitting council member among his casualties, while the Order operated at full strength. The exhibit stands because no counter-exhibit exists. Exhibit 3 is the same day, the same arena, the same canon film. Jango Fett fought Mace Windu on the Geonosian arena floor. Canon, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Windu is documented in canon supplementary sources as among the most dangerous individual lightsaber combatants the Order ever produced. Practitioner of Vapad, a lightsaber form so extreme that virtually no other Jedi could wield it safely, because it channels the user's inner darkness and requires maintaining a precise psychological edge without falling over it. Windu could use it safely because he possessed the psychological discipline not to be consumed by what he was channeling. He was one of the only masters in the Order of whom that was genuinely true. That fight lasted. It became a genuine contest before Jango's jetpack, degraded by a Reek's trampling during the arena chaos, gave out and stripped him of the mobility advantage he'd been using to maintain distance and angle. The record doesn't establish that Jango would have won, and claiming it would be overclaiming. What the record establishes is that Jango Fett, in canon, forced Mace Windu into a real fight at full exertion on the opening day of the Clone Wars. Making that engagement extend, requiring genuine effort rather than resolving in the first exchange, is a tier of achievement the Imperial-era bounty hunter threat matrix never once required Boba Fett to replicate. 60 seconds. No argument. Embo. Kouhun species, and the Kouhun carry themselves with an economy of motion that makes everyone around them look like they're pushing through drag that simply doesn't apply to them. His weapon is his hat, a wide-brimmed disc functioning simultaneously as a thrown weapon, a physical shield, and in one canon Clone Wars sequence that hasn't aged a single frame, an improvised sled he rides down a snow-covered hillside at full speed while the pursuit scrambles to match pace behind him. His pet Marok assists in the field and is clearly beloved. Staff work, hat throws, hand-to-hand, all flowing without a wasted motion, delivered with the expression of someone who finds the entire enterprise mildly interesting at most. Zero controversy about Embo exists in this fandom. Just clean, unanimous appreciation from everyone who has ever encountered the character. He deserved more screen time. That's acknowledged here with complete sincerity and no qualification attached. The Boba Fett argument for number 1, made honestly and without shortcuts, is genuinely strong. The prosecution needs this version of it, not a straw man, but the real case, because the Boba fans watching this are the jury, not the opposition. Era difficulty is the strongest angle, and it holds real weight. The reign of the Empire was, by structural measures, the most competitive period in galactic history for independent bounty hunters. The Empire required contractors for operations that couldn't carry official authorization. Darth Vader personally maintained a hunter network for assignments requiring deniability, Canon, the films. The criminal underworld expanded massively into the vacuum the Clone Wars left, syndicates filling governance gaps across dozens of star systems, while Jabba the Hutt ran at peak influence from Tatooine. Contract volume and the quality of competition in that environment were real. Boba held the top ranking throughout all of it, in canon and legends both. That's a meaningful credential. No disintegrations. Vader says it on the bridge of the Executor. Canon, the Empire strikes back, looking at Fett when he says it. Not general professional courtesy directed at the assembled group. Asset-specific operational restraint issued to one hunter in particular, because that hunter's default output exceeds the job parameters and the target needs to arrive intact. Then Boba locates the Millennium Falcon, actively evading a full Imperial fleet's tracking resources, not through superior technology, but through reading Han Solo's psychology. He deduced that Solo would hide in the fleet's garbage disposal cycle and simply waited for the ship to float free. Solo did exactly that. A hunter operating at that level of psychological analysis is somewhere beyond the range of conventional combat metrics, and the prosecution acknowledges it fully. Legends material, clearly labeled Legends, not Canon, includes 1980s Marvel comics depicting a direct confrontation between Boba Fett and Darth Vader. Some versions attribute the famous dent in Boba's helmet to a blaster bolt Vader deflected back at him. An unfinished canon Clone Wars arc suggests the dent may have originated in a confrontation with Cad Bane instead. Both claims exist in the source record and are in direct conflict. The prosecution presents both, rather than selecting whichever version fits the argument more conveniently. What stands regardless? Legends Boba Fett's record includes combat against the most dangerous individual in the Empire, and that credential is real. In canon, Boba survived the Sarlacc pit, outlasted the Imperial era and its aftermath, and in the Book of Boba Fett ultimately killed Cad Bane in a one-on-one confrontation, using Tusken Raider combat techniques rather than conventional bounty hunter methods, which is a detail worth noting for what it says about his adaptability.